You won't believe what happens next. This magic show not only sparked discussions among the audience, but also made the prince and Eisenhorn the talk of the town. The smart prince began his detective quest to unveil magic's mysteries, yet Eisenhorn effortlessly dispelled his doubts. To confirm his hunch, the prince invited Eisenhorn to perform at the palace. As he left, he challenged his Fiancée style. Eisenhorn's last words seemed to spark a revelation in Sophie. The next day, Sophie seized the chance to send Eisenhorn a letter, engaging in a secret exchange on it. Sophie secretly hopped onto Eisenhorn's carriage. Little did she know, Eisenhorn recognized her during that magic show, despite them not seeing each other for 50 years. Even though they reunited after so long, Eisenhorn hurriedly jumped off the carriage. Sophie still held dear to the necklace he gifted her. Meanwhile, the prince had already dispatched his sneaky inspector to dig into Eisenhorn's background. Surprisingly, Eisenhorn's real name is Edward, an ordinary guy from a rural family until he crossed paths with a mysterious magic traveler. In a flash, the old man waved his hand and out came a frog. Edward was left stunned, thinking, what kind of sorcery is this? Even more astonishing, the frog transformed into a rose, then shook into a flute. Edward, witnessing such miracles, felt like he hit. As the flute floated, the old man mysteriously vanished, and the tree before him disappeared too, leaving Edward completely beguiled by magic. Whether at home or on the street, Edward practiced diligently, catching the eye of a countess. Sophie rode closely behind, and just like that, they became good friends. Edward asked Sophie to pick a card, as if foretelling their fates. Unbelievably, Edward not only found the card but made it float in mid-air. Sophie was totally starstruck. However, because of Edward's humble origins, Sophie's family firmly opposed their relationship, but love had already taken root in their hearts. Over the years, they found all sorts of sneaky ways to meet, even building a secret hideout. Edward promised Sophie that he would whisk her away one day, and made her a shape-shifting necklace by hand. The necklace hid a photo of Edward, but good times didn't last, as the old count discovered their secret, leading to a real heartbreaker. Sophie asked Edward to cast magic to vanish them, but her dream ended, and servants took her home. From the day forward, Edward completely vanished as if he had evaporated from the face of the earth, until he reappeared on stage 15 years later under the name Eisenhorn. He debuted in Vienna, slicing an orange with a borrowed handkerchief and knife simply brilliant. As Edward's knife rose, seeds sprouted fast, astounding the audience. As the orange tree grew at lightning speed, it finally bore fruit, and Edward's fame spread like wildfire. He tossed oranges wildly, asked about the handkerchief, overwhelming the crowd. When the female audience opened the box, she found the handkerchief vanished. Meanwhile, the audience's attention was captivated by butterflies on stage. The audience had to applaud for this spectacular performance. Edward instantly became the star of the show. The media scrambled to cover him, and Edward became a renowned magician overnight. No matter the event, Edward's performances were always packed to the brim. One detective made his way to the venue, as the prince was set to attend the show that night. He marveled at the orange tree act, eager to know the secret. But Edward only taught him a few basic tricks. As the prince was approaching, Edward's assistant grew anxious, but Edward remained calm, waiting for the grand finale. He called for a volunteer to join him, gearing up for a magical act about the soul. The clever prince immediately volunteered his fiancée Sophie. Edward recognized her at once, but Sophie had no idea. At the end of the magic show, one sentence from Edward was an eye-opener for Sophie. She realized Eisenhorn was Edward all along. Although she was now the prince's fiancée, Sophie secretly longed for Edward in her heart. The prince saw Sophie merely as a pawn, and after a brief exchange, they parted ways. Not far away, everything was witnessed by her snoopy subordinates, who reported the incident to the inspector. The inspector, learning Edward and Sophie's relationship, summoned Edward to a restaurant for details. The inspector learned they were childhood friends and advised Edward to be cautious, lest he provoke the prince. Though she claimed to have a good relationship with the prince, the inspector knew she was merely a servant. Soon, the prince hosted a grand soirée, inviting Edward as the guest performer. Edward magically painted on a canvas, revealing an image that nobles instantly recognized as the king's portrait. The audience burst into laughter with jokes, but the prince seemed unimpressed. The prince pointed at the painting, questioning Edward's trick, claiming it was mere chemical reaction, feeling like he was being toyed with. The situation became awkward until Sophie broke the tension, as Edward provocatively asked the butler to turn on the lights for the prince to see. But the prince quickly removed the canvas and demanded Edward to perform without props. Edward gladly accepted, launching into an amazing act. Edward told the tale of the sword-pulling legend and invited an elder to try, but it ended in a complete flop. Next, he called upon a young fellow, but it was all for naught as the elder's embarrassment lingered. The prince stepped up, but still came up short. Edward smiled subtly, hinting at a hidden secret. As the crowd cheered, Edward nodded, and the prince easily pulled out the sword, leading to an eruption of applause.